Picture it. You are 8 months pregnant, bleeding, and in excruciating pain, all alone in your luxury apartment. You call the man who promised to love and protect you, your husband, and he tells you, you are being dramatic. Then he hangs up on you. This was the nightmare Grace Holloway was living. As she lay dying on her bathroom floor, he was at a party, sipping champagne with investors. But destiny had a different idea, because the man who ended up saving her life was her husband's biggest billionaire rival. What happens when a deep betrayal leads to a new beginning? When the man who abandoned her becomes a memory, and the man who despised her husband steps up to be the father her children truly needed. This is a story about heartbreak, powerful revenge, and finding redemption. And believe me, the ending will take your breath away. If you enjoy stories that get your heart pounding and make you cheer for the underdog, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. You do not want to miss a single moment of this journey. This story will teach you the most important lesson every woman needs to know. You cannot shrink yourself into being loved by someone who has already chosen to stop seeing you. And sometimes the person who saves you is yourself. For the fourth time that night, her phone buzzed on the counter. Grace Holloway gazed at the screen, where a smiling photo of her husband looked back at her. It was from their wedding in Nantucket 4 years earlier, back when Derek used to answer her calls. With a trembling hand, she answered the call. "Derek, please, something is terribly wrong. It is the twins. I cannot feel them moving anymore. The pain is getting so much worse, and I am bleeding. I need you to come home this instant." Her voice broke on the final word. In the background, she could clearly hear the sounds of his party for investors, the clink of champagne flutes, loud laughter, and music. It was the sound of successful people doing successful things. "Grace," Derek's voice had a sharp edge to it, the kind that always made her feel insignificant. "I am in the middle of my pitch to the investors. This is the Singapore deal. You are aware of how critical this is. Just take an aspirin and call your doctor. I will be home around 9. "Derek, I am terrified. Something feels very, very wrong this time. You said the same thing last month during that false alarm, and the month before that, when you were worried about preeclampsia. Your doctor confirmed you were perfectly fine. You're just being anxious. The pregnancy hormones are making you paranoid." Grace glanced down at the white maternity dress she was wearing. A dark red stain was spreading across the front, looking like spilled red wine. It was too much blood. Far too much. "This is not the same. Please, I am begging you." He let out a long sigh, the one that communicated she was being difficult, overly dramatic, and just too much to handle. "I will do my best to leave early. Just try to breathe. You are overreacting. Again." The call ended. Grace was left standing by herself in their downtown Seattle penthouse as rain streamed down the massive floor-to-ceiling windows. She was 32 weeks pregnant with twins, bleeding, cramping, and absolutely terrified, and she was completely and utterly alone. She looked at her phone one more time. Lock screen. Unlock. His smiling face. Lock. Unlock. Lock. It was a nervous habit she had picked up in recent months, searching for any sign of connection from a man who shared her home, but felt like he was on another planet. The clock on the wall ticked forward. 7:43 in the evening. Derek had given his word he would be home by 6, which then became 7, and then 8. Now it was 9. She had stopped trusting his promises around the 5th month of her pregnancy. A new wave of pain crashed over her. It was sharp, feeling like knives twisting inside her belly. Grace bent over, clutching the marble kitchen island for support. Derek's old Harvard sweatshirt, one she had claimed as her own years ago, was now drenched in sweat. The babies. She needed to feel her babies move. Grace laid her hands on her stomach, waiting, desperately praying. There was nothing. Only a deep silence where there should have been the familiar kicks and tumbles from two little people vying for room. The voice inside her head, the one she had been trying to suppress for months, finally screamed with undeniable clarity. Call 911. Stop waiting for him to show up. He is not coming. He never does. Call 911 immediately. With shaking fingers, Grace found her phone. 911. What is your emergency? I am pregnant, 32 weeks along with twins. Something is wrong. The pain is unbearable. I cannot. There is so much blood. Ma'am, can you give me your address? Grace provided the information, the address of the penthouse, in the exclusive downtown building. It was the kind of address that usually made people pause, impressed by the apparent wealth, the success, and the picture-perfect life she was supposed to have. At that moment, none of it made a difference. Not the marble islands, the high-end furniture, or the sweeping view of Elliott Bay. Are you currently bleeding? Grace looked down once more at the puddle forming at her feet. It was a dark crimson against the pure white marble. Yes. Oh my God. Yes. Paramedics have been dispatched. Please stay on the line with me. Is there anyone there with you? No, I am all alone. Is there someone you can call? A relative? Your husband? Grace let out a laugh. It sounded broken and unnatural, like the sound of something shattering into pieces. I have been trying to reach my husband all day. He is far too busy. The operator's voice seemed to soften, just slightly. It was enough for Grace to sense that the woman on the other end understood. It was a story she had likely heard countless times before. A pregnant woman, a husband who was never there, a story as old as time itself. Okay, honey, the ambulance is just 3 minutes from you. I want you to try and sit down on the floor. Can you do that for me? Grace attempted to follow the instruction, but her legs buckled beneath her. She collapsed to her knees, onto the cold marble floor, and the phone skidded out of her reach. She could hear the faint, distant voice of the operator. Ma'am? Ma'am? Can you hear me? I need you to respond to me. Grace tried to speak, but she could not make the words form. The room began to spin, tilting sideways as her vision started to fade to gray around the edges. Her hands instinctively went to her belly, both palms pressed firmly against it. Please, please just be okay. Please. She felt one kick. It was weak. A faint flutter, like a secret message from behind a wall. And then there was silence. The very last thought Grace had before she was consumed by darkness was that she had made a terrible number of mistakes. She had stayed in the relationship for too long. She had forgiven far too much. She had tricked herself into believing that Derek's being busy meant he still loved her. But she finally understood that busy was just a code word for choosing something else, choosing someone else, choosing anything in the world but her. The sound of sirens began to break through her fading consciousness, growing louder and closer. Help was on its way. It was too late to rescue her marriage, but maybe, just maybe, it was not too late to save her babies. The paramedics discovered Grace unconscious on the marble floor, lying in an expanding pool of her own blood. We have an unresponsive patient. Female appears to be in her early 30s, 32 weeks pregnant with twins. She has significant hemorrhaging. We are looking at a possible placental abruption. Sarah Mitchell, the junior paramedic, knelt down next to Grace as her partner, Linda, started checking her vital signs. In her 5 years on the job, Sarah had witnessed a lot. Horrific car crashes, heart attacks, and overdoses. But seeing a pregnant woman bleeding, and all alone, always struck a deeper chord. Her blood pressure is 80/50. Her heart rate is at 130. She is going into shock. They worked quickly starting an IV line, fitting an oxygen mask, and securing her neck before moving her to the gurney. Sarah took in the small details, the luxurious penthouse, the wedding portraits hanging on the wall showing a handsome man in a sharp suit and a radiant bride in a lace gown. They both looked so young, full of hope, and deeply in love. And now, that same bride was dying by herself. In the ambulance, den famous moments, Grace's eyelids fluttered open. She was disoriented and frightened. "My babies," she managed to whisper. "Are my babies going to be okay?" Sarah gently took her hand and gave it a squeeze. "We are on our way to the hospital. You are going to be just fine. What is your name?" "Grace. My name is Grace Holloway." "All right, Grace. Can you tell me how far along you are in your pregnancy?" 32 weeks. It is twins, a boy and a girl. Are they still alive? Please, you have to tell me if they are still alive." Sarah glanced at the fetal monitors. There were 2 heartbeats. They were rapid, but they were there. They were fighting. They are hanging on. All 3 of you are fighters. Is there anyone we can contact for you? Your husband? Any family? Grace's expression crumbled. "My husband? Derek. His name is Derek Holloway. You can find his number in my phone." Linda located the phone, dialed the number, and put it on speaker. It rang 4 times before he answered. Derek's voice came through the speaker, sounding annoyed and a little intoxicated. "I already told you that I would call you back." Sarah took over, her voice professional but icy. "Mr. Holloway, this is the City Memorial Paramedic Team. We are transporting your wife, who is suffering from a potential placental abruption. She is 32 weeks pregnant with twins. This situation is life-threatening. We require your presence at Mercy General Hospital immediately." There was a long silence on the line. The background noise of the party was audible. Music, laughter, and the distinct clinking of champagne glasses. "I am sorry, but this is really terrible timing. How serious are we talking here?" Sarah's jaw tightened. Grace saw it, and so did Linda. "Sir, your wife is hemorrhaging. Your twins are in distress. There is a real possibility she could die. This is as serious as it can possibly get. We need you at the hospital right now." "Right, okay. I will try to get over there as soon as I am able." Try, the word just hung in the tense air of the ambulance, like a poison. "Sir, this is not a try situation. This is a now situation. Your wife needs you here." "I understand. I will be there." Then he hung up. There was no, "Is she going to be okay?" No, "Please tell her I love her." Not even an, "I am on my way." Just a cold, dismissive, "I will be there," followed by the click of the line going dead. Sarah looked over at Grace. Their eyes met, a moment of understanding passing between 2 women. No words were necessary. That single look was more painful than the contractions, because it was a look of recognition. Someone else had finally seen the truth. Someone else had witnessed his indifference, and that meant Grace was not losing her mind. She had not been imagining things. She was not being overly dramatic, as Derek always claimed. This was real. Her husband had just been informed that his wife might be dying, and his response was that he would try to make it. Try. The rest of the ambulance ride was a blur. Red and white lights flashed against the windows outside, and the wail of the siren drowned out everything but Grace's own thoughts. Memories came flooding back, each one as sharp and painful as a needle. There was Derek, missing her first ultrasound. "The meeting for the merger was moved up, honey. You get it, right? It is only one appointment." She had understood. She always made sure to understand. Then there was Derek missing their gender reveal party. He was in Tokyo for a business conference. She had ended up cutting the cake by herself. It had layers of pink and blue, twins, a boy and a girl. She had cried as her mother held her, saying, "He is just working so hard for his new family." But was he? Really? Their fourth wedding anniversary was just 3 months ago. He had canceled their dinner reservation at the very restaurant where he had proposed to her. He had to take a client out, he said. It was unavoidable. She had eaten Chinese takeout by herself in their bedroom, flipping through their wedding album and wondering at what point he had stopped looking at her as if she was the most important person in the world. And just last week, on Thursday night, she had finally confronted him about it directly. "Do you still love me?" Grace asked, but Derek never once looked up from his computer screen. "Of course," he said. "Don't be so dramatic." It was not a yes. It was not more than anything. He did not ask her what kind of question that was. He just told her not to be dramatic, as if her feelings were a bother, a problem he had to solve, a tiny error in his otherwise flawless life. "Grace, just stay with me," Sarah's voice said, pulling her back to reality. "We are almost there. Just 2 more minutes. Keep breathing." Grace tried to focus on her breathing. In and then out. In and then out. She rested her hands on her stomach, her flat palms pressed against the tight skin. "I am so sorry," she whispered to her babies. "I am so sorry I did not leave him sooner. I am sorry I let him convince me I was crazy. I am sorry your father is a man who does not even show up." One of the babies kicked, a faint but definite movement, a little fighter. Their mother was about to become one too. The doors of the ambulance burst open, revealing the bright lights and organized rush of the Mercy General Emergency Bay. A woman in surgical scrubs hurried toward them. Her dark hair was pulled back, and she had a powerful, commanding presence. Her name badge read, "Dr. Caroline Cross, OBGYN. I am Dr. Cross. Grace, are you able to hear me?" Grace managed a nod. "We have to take you directly into an emergency C-section. The twins are showing signs of distress. We need to deliver them right now. Do you understand what I am saying?" "Yes," she breathed. "Is your husband here with you?" Grace's voice cracked. "No." "Is he on his way?" "He said he would try to make it." Dr. Cross's jaw clenched, and a dark flash of anger crossed her eyes. It was a fury she was struggling to hold back. "Is there anyone else we can call for you? Your parents? A friend? Anybody at all?" Grace's mind felt completely empty. Her mother was in Florida visiting her sister. Her best friend, Marissa, was working a double shift at a different hospital clear across town. There is nobody. There is no one else. The doctor's expression shifted, softening for a brief moment before hardening again with resolve. "Then you have me. I will not leave your side. I promise you that." They began wheeling Grace toward the operating room. She watched the ceiling tiles pass by overhead, counting them to focus on something other than her fear. 37 tiles. Then they reached the doors to the surgical suite. As they placed the anesthesia mask over her face, Grace had one last clear thought. She had stayed in her marriage for far too long. She had forgiven far too much. She had made herself smaller and smaller, believing that if she simply needed less from him, Derek would finally give her something. But you cannot shrink yourself into being loved by someone. She understood that now. It was too late, but she finally understood it. The world faded to black. Nathan Cross was sitting in the surgical waiting room, his hands clasped tightly together, wondering what on earth he was doing there. Just 20 minutes earlier, he had been at the Children's Hospital Gala. It was a $1,000 a plate dinner. He was in a tuxedo and bow tie, mingling with donors and giving speeches about the importance of showing up for children in need. That was when his phone buzzed. It was Carolyn, his sister. "Nathan, I need you to get to Mercy General, right now." She offered no explanation, but her voice was filled with an urgency that meant you do not ask questions. You just go. So, He went. He left the gala right in the middle of his speech, got into his car, and drove through the Seattle traffic as if his life depended on it. And now, here he sat, all alone in a sterile, waiting room that smelled of antiseptic and stale coffee, waiting to find out why. The television in the corner was playing the news on mute, showing some political scandal. The world just kept on turning as if nothing was wrong. But Nathan was not thinking about the news. He was thinking about Derek Holloway. In the world of biotech and pharmaceuticals, everyone knew Derek Holloway. They either admired him or they hated him. Nathan was firmly in the group that hated him. 2 years ago, Derek's company, Holloway Pharmaceuticals, had sued Nathan's company, Cross-Tech Biomedical, for patent infringement. They had falsely claimed that Nathan's groundbreaking cancer treatment was developed from their own research. It was a complete lie. It was a calculated and cruel lie created to steal 5 years of Nathan's hard work. The case dragged on for 6 months in court and cost him $2 million in legal fees. In the end, Nathan won. The judge even called Holloway Pharma's lawsuit frivolous and without merit. But Derek just smiled on the courthouse steps. He actually smiled and told reporters, "Sometimes you take a shot, and it just does not land. No hard feelings." Nathan, however, had plenty of hard feelings. 6 months ago, at another industry gala, Derek had cornered Nathan by the bar. He was 3 drinks in and feeling nasty. "Are you enjoying your big victory, Cross? If you are talking about the lawsuit where you tried to steal my research, then yes, I am." Derek leaned in close, his breath smelling strongly of whiskey. "You should be careful. Pride comes before the fall. I have been speaking with some investors, just mentioning some concerns about your testing protocols. Ethical concerns, you know, nothing solid, just concerns." 3 weeks after that, Nathan's company was under investigation because of an anonymous tip about unethical testing. They were cleared of all wrongdoing, of course, but the harm had already been done. Their stock price dropped by 15%, and 2 of their major investors pulled their funding. Derek Holloway was responsible for all of it, and for the past 6 months, Nathan had been fantasizing about getting his revenge in various ways, none of which were legal, but all of which felt satisfying. So, when Caroline had called and mentioned Derek's name, Nathan's first thought was to tell her he wanted no part of it. Whatever Derek Holloway needed, he could go to hell for it. But then Caroline said 5 words that changed his mind completely. "His wife is dying alone." So now Nathan sat in the waiting room, his hands still clasped, thinking about his mother. It was 20 years ago. She had cancer. It was already stage 4 when they discovered it. His father had visited her only twice in 8 months. He was always too busy with his business, too important to sit with his dying wife. She died all alone in a Boston hospital room at 2 o'clock in the morning. A nurse found her and called the family at 6. Nathan's father had been in Singapore attending a conference. He did not get home until 18 hours later. Nathan was only 14 at the time, away at boarding school. He swore on that day that he would never, ever become his father. He would never be too busy for the people who truly mattered. He would never let someone die alone simply because he had better places to be. And yet, here he was. He was 40 years old, working 80 hours a week, with no relationship lasting more than 3 months. He was throwing money at problems instead of actually showing up for people. He had become his father, after all. The waiting room doors swung open, and Caroline walked in. She was still in her surgical scrubs. Her hair was damp with sweat, and there was a smear of blood on her sleeve. Exhaustion was etched deep into her face. Nathan quickly stood up. "Caro?" When she saw him, her expression softened. "You came." "Of course I came. How is she doing?" Caroline led him into a quiet part of the hallway, away from the other people who were waiting, away from anyone who might overhear. "The twins are alive," she said. "They were born at 32 weeks. They are small, but they are strong. It is a boy and a girl. 3 pounds 12 ounces and 4 pounds 1 ounce. They are both in the NICU right now." "And what about Grace?" Caroline's face grew dark. She lost a great deal of blood. It was a placental abruption, a complete separation. If she had arrived 20 minutes later, we would have lost all 3 of them. Something tightened painfully in Nathan's chest. A woman he did not even know had almost died. Maybe she was still dying. But is she stable now? For the time being, we gave her transfusions and stitches. She's going to need weeks to recover. But she is alive. Where's Derek? A look of pure fury flashed in Caroline's eyes. He is not here. He never even showed up? Not yet. I had the nurses call him 3 separate times while she was in surgery. It went straight to his voicemail every time. Nathan's hands balled into tight fists. It has been more than an hour. I know. His wife nearly died. I know. His children were just born. I know that, Nathan. Caroline ran a hand through her hair, making it stick up in stressed-out spikes. I have been a doctor for 12 years now. I have seen my share of deadbeat dads and absent fathers. Men who run away when things get tough. But this? She called him 4 times. She was begging him, bleeding, completely terrified. And he chose to go to a party instead. What kind of a man does something like that? The kind of man who does not deserve her. Nathan took out his phone. He still had Derek's personal cell number, the one Derek had given him during the lawsuit. "Call me if you ever want to settle." Nathan had never called him, until this moment. He dialed the number. The phone rang 3 times before Derek answered, his voice sounding cheerful and a little drunk. "Cross? Is it not a bit late for a business call?" "Your wife almost died tonight," Nathan said flatly. There was a pause. He could hear music and laughter in the background. Derek did not even bother to move away from the noise. "What?" "Grace. Your pregnant wife, she had a hemorrhage. They performed an emergency C-section. Your twins are in the NICU right now. She is in the recovery room, and you are at a party." There was a longer pause this time. The noise in the background did not stop. There was no urgency in his voice, no sign of panic, just confusion. "I am sorry. How do you even know about my wife? Because someone had to be here for her, since you obviously could not be bothered. Now you just wait a minute. She called you 4 times. Did you know that? 4 calls while she was bleeding out on your bathroom floor. 4 voicemails where she begged you to come home, and you told her you would try to make it. Try. As if she were a dentist appointment you might squeeze in if the traffic was not too bad. I was in a very important meeting. No. You are at a party. I can hear it. Champagne, music, laughter. Your wife was dying, and you were busy drinking champagne with investors." Derek's voice turned hard. "You do not know what you are talking about, Cross. You are trying to interfere in my marriage." "Room 847, Mercy General, just in case you are interested in actually meeting your children." Nathan hung up the phone. Caroline stood there watching him. "Do you feel any better?" "No," Nathan said, sitting down hard in one of the plastic chairs. "I feel worse, because now I know for sure. He is not just a bad businessman. He is a monster. So what are you going to do now?" Nathan looked at his sister, really looked at her. He saw the deep exhaustion, the anger, and the fierce sense of protection in her eyes. "I am going to sit with her, so she is not alone when she wakes up." "Nathan, you really do not have to." "Yes, I do. Someone has to be there. And it is obvious that Derek is not going to be that person." Caroline nodded her head slowly. "Room 847, Recovery. She should be waking up in about 30 minutes. I will be there. Thank you, Caroline said, for coming, for caring about this, for being nothing like him. Nathan got to his feet, adjusting his bow tie. Thank you for the call, he said. As he headed for room 847, he had no idea he was walking toward the woman who would completely reshape his world. Grace's eyelids flickered, opening to the glare of fluorescent lights and the rhythmic beeping of monitors. She saw a ceiling made of white tiles and the shapes of medical machines. The sharp scent of antiseptic confirmed it. A hospital. Her hands instinctively went to her belly, only to find it flat and hollow. A wave of pure panic crashed over her. No, it can't be, she whispered, her voice a broken, unfamiliar croak. My babies. What happened to my babies? A young nurse with kind eyes entered the room. Her name tag read, Rachel Thompson. Mrs. Holloway, it is all right. You are in the recovery room now. Your babies are doing well. They are in the neonatal intensive care unit. You have a son and a daughter. They are little, but they are fighters. Tears began to stream down Grace's face, a chaotic mix of relief, fear, and a love so powerful it hurt. Can I please see them? Very soon, the nurse promised. We just need your condition to be more stable. You lost a significant amount of blood, but Dr. Cross performed brilliantly. You are going to be fine. How long was I unconscious? Just over an hour. The procedure was a success. The next words left Grace's lips without a thought, a reflex honed by 4 years of marriage. Where is Derek? A slight, almost imperceptible change crossed Rachel's face, but Grace noticed it immediately. That nurse knew something. Grace was sure of it. Let me find out for you, sweetie, she said before slipping out. Grace remained on her back, her gaze fixed on the ceiling. She started counting the tiles. There were 37 going one way and 23 the other, a total of 851 tiles. It had been 37 minutes since she opened her eyes, and Derek still was not there. As the fog of the anesthesia lifted, her thoughts started piecing together a painful reality. My body just endured the most frightening ordeal it will ever face. I was wheeled into an operating room, uncertain if I would ever open my eyes again, if my children would make it, or if that was my final day on earth. And he is not here. He still has not come. What does that signify? No, I already know. I have known for months. It signifies that I am on my own. I have been for a long time. My loneliness in our marriage started way before I was by myself in that ambulance. The late work nights. It was so obvious. The evenings he would arrive home with the scent of a perfume she did not wear. Grace had convinced herself it was from a business meeting or a harmless hug from a coworker. It was never harmless, the way he would recoil from her touch. As if her hands were alien and unwanted, the smile that would appear on his face as he stared at his phone, a smile she had not seen aimed at her for years. Another woman existed. Of course, another woman existed. Who would choose to stay with a dull, pregnant wife when someone thrilling was waiting, someone who did not snore, whose figure was not swollen and marked by pregnancy, someone who wanted nothing from him but the things he was already providing, his focus, his presence, his love. All the things Derek once gave to Grace, the very things she had pleaded for, the things he had chosen to give to someone else. A gentle rap sounded at the door. Grace's heart leaped. He was here. Derek. But it was not him. A man was standing in the doorway. He was tall with dark hair, perhaps in his 40s, and wore a tuxedo with a loosened bow tie. He seemed awkward and out of his element. Yet his eyes were full of kindness. Hello, my name is Nathan. Nathan Cross. My sister is Dr. Cross. Caroline, she was your surgeon. Grace just looked at him, a total stranger, standing in her hospital room. I do not understand. What is this? I realize this is highly unusual. A complete stranger just showing up like this. But Caroline phoned me. She mentioned you were by yourself. And I felt that perhaps you should not have to be, especially not tonight. Grace's eyes welled up with tears. She fought to hold them back, but it was impossible. Why would you do something like that? We have never even met. Nathan took a hesitant step into the room. Is it all right if I sit down? Grace gave a small nod. He took the seat next to her bed and placed 2 cups of awful hospital coffee on the bedside table. 20 years ago, my mother passed away in a hospital room, all alone. My father was away at a work conference in Singapore. Caroline and I were both away at college. A nurse discovered her the next morning. She had been gone for hours. She died by herself because we were all occupied with other things, important things, our own lives. Grace felt her breath catch in her throat. I can never fix that. I cannot turn back time and be there for her when she needed me. But when Caroline called tonight and told me you were here, alone, after nearly dying, I felt I had to come. I hope that makes sense. You did not need to come here. I am aware of that, but I chose to. Nathan reached for one of the coffee cups and held it out to her. The coffee is dreadful. It is from a vending machine down the hall, but at least it is warm. Grace accepted it, her hands trembling. They sat together in a comfortable silence for a little while. Then Grace finally voiced the question she feared she already knew the answer to. Where is my husband? Nathan's expression hardened. I called him myself, about a half hour ago. I let him know you were here and that the babies had been born. He told me he would try to get here. Try. Yes, try. A terrible, broken laugh escaped Grace's lips. Of course, he will try. He is excellent at trying. The problem is he never actually succeeds, does he? I am so sorry. Do not be. This is not your fault. It is mine. For continuing to stay. For trusting him each time he promised things would be different. For making up justifications for his behavior. For telling myself that his being busy was a sign that he still loved me. This is not your fault. Is it not? I noticed all the clues. The long nights, the emotional gap between us, the way he distanced himself. I was aware something was wrong, but I convinced myself that I was just being paranoid, overly emotional. Exactly what he always told me I was. You are not going crazy. How can you be so sure? Because I spoke with him on the phone, after the paramedics called him, and after I called him. On both occasions, he prioritized something else. That is not you being overly emotional. That is him choosing not to be here. Grace broke down completely. These were not quiet tears, but deep, heaving sobs. The kind that rise from a place of long, suppressed pain. The kind she had been swallowing for months, maybe even years. Nathan did not offer any meaningless reassurances. He did not say things like, I bet he is on his way, or, he does love you, he just has a hard time expressing it. He simply moved his chair a little closer, and he stayed. I understand this is incredibly painful. I am sorry. Just those 3 simple words. I am sorry. It was the first sincere recognition of her pain she had received all evening. The first time someone had confirmed that what she was feeling was valid, that her hurt was justified. Grace's sobs grew even stronger. Nathan remained with her, patiently, quietly, simply being there. 10 minutes went by, then 15, then 20. Suddenly, the door flew open with a bang. Derek Holloway had finally made his appearance. Derek stormed into the room like a force of nature. He was still dressed in his expensive designer suit, a charcoal gray Tom Ford. His hair was styled perfectly, without a single strand out of place. His tie was loosened just so, creating the illusion that he had been frantic with worry. But Grace could see the truth. He smelled of champagne and a pricey cologne. His face was flushed, but it was from alcohol, not from racing down hospital hallways in a desperate attempt to get to his wife's side. His gaze swept across the room, first landing on Grace and then shifting to Nathan. His look transformed. First came recognition, then raw anger. "Wow, what in the hell do you think you are doing in my wife's room?" Nathan rose from his chair, slowly and with purpose, unfolding his full 6'2" frame. He spoke in a low, steady voice that did not need to be raised. "I was present." 3 simple words, yet they were absolutely crushing. Derek's face turned a shade of crimson. "Leave, right now." "Derek." Grace's voice was weak, a faint attempt to intervene. Derek ignored her, his eyes fixed on Nathan. "Not you, him. I do not know what kind of stunt you are trying to pull, Cross, but my wife just came out of surgery, and I will not let you take advantage of her in this state." "I am well aware she had surgery." Nathan's tone remained unnervingly calm. "I was present." He repeated the words, this time more deliberately, each one twisting like a knife. "You son of a—" Derek lunged at him. Nathan stood his ground, not even flinching. Grace's voice sliced through the tension. "Stop it." Both men stopped in their tracks. "Derek, he is telling the truth. He was here. You were not." At last, Derek turned to face his wife, truly seeing her for the first time since he had entered. She was ashen, an intravenous line in her arm, wearing a standard hospital gown. Her hair was damp with sweat. She looked utterly drained, and beautiful, and vulnerable, his. But the look in her eyes was different. The hope was gone. There was no sign of relief that he had finally shown up. No ready-made forgiveness waiting for him. There was only a void. "Grace, you are being emotional. You just went through a major operation. The anesthesia, the drugs. You are not thinking straight." "On the contrary, I am thinking with perfect clarity." "No, you are not. You have no idea what you are saying. This man is a rival in my business. He despises me. He has probably been poisoning your mind with all sorts of lies." "I tried to call you 4 times. Her voice was unwavering now, gaining strength. Derek blinked, changing his strategy. "I was tied up in a meeting with investors. You know how critical this Singapore deal is. It is a make-or-break situation for the company. I was trying to secure our family's future. I was hemorrhaging. I was afraid I was going to lose our babies. You are constantly imagining the worst." Derek's voice adopted that familiar tone, the one that was patient on the surface, but seething with annoyance underneath. The one he used to make Grace question her own sanity. "Last month, you thought you were in labor with Braxton Hicks. The month before that, you were convinced you had preeclampsia. The doctor told you that you were fine. You are just being paranoid, Grace. The pregnancy hormones are making you—" "I nearly died tonight." "Do not be so dramatic." "I nearly died." Complete silence filled the room. The only sounds were the steady beeps of the monitors, marking time, keeping her alive. "And you were not here. You put investors ahead of me, ahead of our own children. That is not fair. You are distorting the situation. I was working. I was providing for this family." "When was the last time you actually chose me, Derek?" Derek's mouth opened, then snapped shut. He tried again. "That is not a reasonable question." "When was the last time you initiated any physical contact with me? When did you last inquire about my day, or how I was feeling, or about the babies? When was the last time you looked at me with the same expression you have when your phone buzzes? Grace, I put in 14-hour days to provide this lifestyle for us. The penthouse apartment, your luxury car, the elite private schools our children are going to attend. Every single thing you possess is a result of my hard work. I could not care less about the penthouse. Derek paused, blinking in confusion. And so, what about what I'm say? I was done with the penthouse, the fancy car, and the expensive private schools. All I ever wanted was him, was us. But that didn't exist anymore, did it? It was just him, his job, his phone, and whatever secrets he kept when he was away from home. And then there was me, just waiting. I was always waiting. A clear thought cut through the fog in my mind. No more excuses, no more doubt. For 3 years, I had been the one saying sorry. I apologized for needing him. I apologized for wanting him to come home. I apologized for asking where he had been. I apologized for being lonely, for being pregnant and sick and overwhelmed. My entire existence had become an apology for inconveniencing him. But I was done apologizing. This was not my fault. It was his. He made these choices. Every single late night, every unanswered phone call, every time he looked at me as if I were a problem to be solved instead of his wife. He chose this path. And now, I was choosing mine. My voice was quiet, but firm, when I spoke. Leave. Derek just stared, completely bewildered. What did you say? I want you to leave. I do not want you here. Grace, you are not thinking straight. It is the medication from the surgery talking. I am thinking with more clarity than I have in years. Get out. She told you to get out. Nathan's voice cut in, smooth as silk, but with an edge of steel. Derek spun around to face him. This is all because of you. You have turned her against me. You came in here with your sob story and manipulated my own wife. Your wife nearly died here, all alone. For the first time, Nathan's voice boomed with a tightly controlled rage that finally broke free. While you were popping champagne, charming investors, and doing God knows what else at your fancy party, your wife was bleeding out on your bathroom floor. She tried to call you 4 separate times. 4. She was begging for help. She was bleeding. She was terrified. And you told her you would try to make it. You treated her like she was some appointment you might squeeze in if you had time. You have no idea about the kind of pressure I am under. What I understand is that I despise you. I have despised you for years. You tried to steal my life's work. You tried to ruin my company. You are a fraud and a user, and you represent everything that is rotten in our industry. But this? Nathan moved a step closer, his voice dropping low. This proves you are something far worse than a terrible businessman. It proves you are a coward who left his wife completely alone when she was desperate for his help. Derek's hands balled into fists at his sides. Get out of here before I have security remove you. Go ahead and call them, please. I would be thrilled to tell hospital security why Grace's husband decided to show up 3 hours late while a complete stranger sat by her side because she had no one else. A buzz came from Derek's pocket. His phone. He glanced down at it. It was pure instinct, a reflex he could not control. Grace saw the look on his face shift. It softened, just for a moment. She knew that expression all too well. She had seen it countless times before. It was the look he got when he read texts late into the night. The look he had when he would take phone calls in another room. It was the way he would smile at his phone screen as if it held a wonderful secret. That look had never been for her, not once. Who is she? Derek went completely still, his phone clutched in his hand. What are you talking about? I said, who is she? The woman you are texting right now. The woman who gets you to smile that way. The woman you obviously wish you were with instead of me. Who is she? All the color drained from Derek's face, and in that moment, Grace knew. A part of her had always known, but this was the first time she had proof. Derek remained frozen, his phone in his hand, his face as white as a sheet. Grace, this is not what it looks like. Stop. Her voice was now like ice. Cold, sharp, and final. Do not you dare lie to me. Not now, not in this place, not after what has happened. You owe me the truth. For the first time in our marriage, just tell me the absolute truth. The room was silent except for the steady beeping of the medical machines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 beeps. Each sound was like a tick of a clock, counting down the final seconds of their marriage. How long has this been going on? Derek stared down at the polished floor. Grace? How long? For 6 months? The world seemed to tilt on its axis. 6 months. Grace quickly did the math in her head. She was 7 months pregnant. You began cheating on me right after I became pregnant. It was not like that. Then tell me what it was like. Please, make it make sense to me. Help me understand how you could start sleeping with another woman while I was at home, carrying your children. Nathan quietly took a step back, trying to give them some privacy, but his supportive presence remained, solid and unwavering. It was like an anchor in the storm. Derek anxiously ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, messing it up for the first time she had ever seen. You were different. As soon as you got pregnant, your entire world became about the baby. Then the babies. It was all doctor visits and picking out colors for the nursery and talking about names. I started to feel invisible, like I was not important anymore. Grace let out a laugh. It was a terrible, ugly sound, full of bitterness and pain. So you decided to push me out of your life completely. I never planned for any of this to happen. It just did. Things became so complicated, and I did not know how to end it. Who is she? Derek paused. Derek, tell me her name. Vanessa. The name felt like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of her. Vanessa? Nathan's voice was sharp with disbelief and anger. You mean Vanessa Reed? Your own executive assistant? Derek's guilty silence was all the confirmation she needed. Grace's thoughts began to race. Vanessa Reed. She was 28 years old, stunningly beautiful. She had a Master of Business Administration from Stanford. She was always dressed impeccably. She was always right there by Derek's side. Grace had met her on several occasions, at company functions, at holiday parties, in Derek's own office. Grace had smiled at her. They had made polite conversation. Grace had asked about her family. She had even complimented her clothes. Just last Christmas, Grace had baked her a batch of homemade cookies. They were from her grandmother's special recipe, chocolate chip with a sprinkle of sea salt. Vanessa had even sent a thank you note. You are so incredibly sweet. Derek is so lucky to have you. Derek is so lucky to have you. The trip to Hawaii? Grace's voice was disturbingly calm. Back in March, for that pharmaceutical conference. The look on Derek's face gave him away before he could even speak. She was there with you, was not she? Grace, I was the one who packed your suitcase for that trip. I put in your favorite sunscreen, your blue swimming trunks. I even hid a little note inside your luggage. I told you that I loved you, that I was already missing you. Did you even bother to read it? Or did she discover it first? Derek remained silent. Answer my question. Well, I read it. And what happened next? Did you go to her hotel room? Grace, please do not do this to yourself. Answer me. Yes. All right? Yes, I went to her room. Grace shut her eyes, took a deep breath, and then opened them again. The night I told you we were having twins. It was May 15th. Our 4-year wedding anniversary. I cooked your favorite meal. I put on the dress you bought for me when we were in Paris. I had the ultrasound pictures ready in a little frame. 2 tiny heartbeats. Twins. I could not wait to share the news with you. Derek's expression completely fell apart. You got home 3 hours late that night. You told me traffic on the bridge was terrible. Grace, you were with her on our anniversary, on the very same day that I learned I was carrying your twin babies. You were with her. It was not supposed to be serious. It was a mistake, a one-time thing. But then it just kept happening, and I did not know how to make it stop. You make it stop by stopping. You make it stop by not going to her, by not sending her texts, by not choosing her over your pregnant wife every single day for the last 6 months. Do you love her? Derek did not give an answer. Derek, I am asking you, do you love her? I am not sure. Do you love me? Of course I do not. Grace's voice finally cracked with emotion. Do not say it if you do not mean it. Do you still love me? Me, the woman you chose to marry, the mother of your children. Do you still love me? Derek finally looked at her. He truly looked at her, and he said absolutely nothing. His silence was the only answer she needed. Get out. Grace, we can work through this. We can go to marriage counseling. I will end things with Vanessa. I've still cut off all communication with her. We have children on the way now. We have to at least try. She asked you to leave. Nathan's voice was now laced with menace. She has asked you multiple times, so go, before I have to personally walk you out of here myself. You stay out of this, Cross. This is a private matter between me and my wife. You mean the wife you cheated on, the wife you abandoned, the wife who was close to death tonight because you were too busy with your assistant to pick up your phone. Derek lunged toward Nathan, but Nathan sidestepped the attack with ease. He was practiced, as if he had been expecting it. Derek lost his balance and stumbled, catching himself against the wall. I could have you arrested for assault, Nathan said, his voice perfectly calm. Hospitals have security cameras everywhere. It would be very well documented. Derek adjusted his suit jacket, trying to pull himself together. This is not finished. Yes, it is. Grace's voice was quiet, but it was final. You were the one who finished it 6 months ago when you chose her. You finished it today when you ignored my calls for help. You finished it when you walked in here 3 hours late, smelling like champagne. It is over. Derek, you need to accept that. You are going to live to regret this. The only thing I regret is that I did not leave you sooner. Derek glanced between Grace and Nathan one last time. He was thinking, weighing his choices. He understood when he had been defeated. My lawyers will be in contact with you. And then he was gone. The door clicked shut behind him. The room became quiet again, the only sound coming from the machines. They beeped rhythmically, keeping Grace alive. Grace stared at the closed door for what felt like a very long time. And then she began to tremble. She was not crying. She was shaking. Her entire body was shaking. It was as if all the adrenaline was finally draining out of her. All of the terror, all of the energy it had taken to say all those things. It was all gone. She felt completely hollow. Nathan quietly moved back to the chair beside her bed. He did not say a word. He just sat with her. Grace trembled for a full 5 minutes. When it finally subsided, she looked over at Nathan. This man, a stranger, had just witnessed her at her most vulnerable moment. Thank you. You have nothing to thank me for? Yes, I do. You stayed here with me. You did not have to, but you did. I had a feeling. Grace's voice was barely a whisper. Deep down inside, I knew that something was not right. The constant late nights, the way he became so distant, the smell of another woman's perfume on his shirts. But I kept telling myself I was just being crazy, that I was paranoid, that my pregnancy hormones were making me imagine things. You are not crazy. I should have said something to him sooner, months ago, instead of just letting it. No. Nathan's voice was firm, cutting her off. Do not do that to yourself. Do not do what? Do not take the blame for the choices he made. He was the one who cheated. He was the one who lied. He manipulated you. He made you question your own sanity. That is all on him, not you. But I noticed all the red flags, and he lied about them. He probably made you feel guilty for even bringing them up. Am I right? Grace nodded as tears streamed down her cheeks. That is the very definition of narcissistic abuse. They twist things around to make you doubt what you know is real. They make you believe that you are the one with the problem, that you are too needy, too emotional, or too suspicious. But you are not any of those things. You were right all along. Your instincts were right. He was just a very convincing liar. Grace stared through the window as a new day began. Hues of pink and orange bled across the city skyline. She had not slept in 24 hours. In that time, she had given birth to twins and nearly lost her own life. She had also discovered her husband's affair and ended their marriage. And yet, the sun came up anyway. There was a strange beauty in that, a glimmer of hope. The world did not pause for a broken heart. It moved forward, and that meant she could move forward too. A nurse, Rachel, appeared at her door. "Mrs. Holloway, do you feel strong enough to go meet your babies?" In that single moment, everything else vanished. The pain, the betrayal, the crushing exhaustion. None of it mattered anymore. "Yes, please, I do." They took Grace to the neonatal intensive care unit in a wheelchair, with Nathan walking quietly beside her. She had asked him to be there because she needed someone, and it was painfully clear Derek was not going to show up. The unit was a hushed, warm space with dim lighting. The only sounds were the soft, rhythmic beeps of tiny heart monitors. Nurses glided around silently, while parents kept vigil by their incubators, their faces etched with hope and prayer. Rachel came to a stop beside two incubators, placed next to each other. Baby girl Holloway, 3 pounds and 12 ounces. Baby boy Holloway, 4 pounds and 1 ounce. Two impossibly small, impossibly perfect little humans. They were connected to a tangle of wires and tubes, far too many for their tiny bodies, but they were breathing. They were moving. They were alive. Emma had a full head of dark hair, just like Derek's. Lucas was bald and pink, with Grace's nose. They were absolutely perfect. Grace began to cry, but these were different tears. They were a mixture of joy and grief, of overwhelming love and paralyzing terror. "They are just so small," she whispered. "They are fighters," Rachel said in a gentle voice. "They have strong vitals and good oxygen levels. Dr. Cross says they are doing incredibly well for being born at 32 weeks. Grace asked, "Am I allowed to touch them?" "Of course." Rachel opened a small porthole on the incubator. Grace slowly reached a single finger inside and touched Emma's hand. Emma's tiny fingers immediately wrapped around her finger with a surprisingly tight, strong grip. That little grip, that tiny, perfect grip. In that instant, Grace's entire world shifted. She then reached for Lucas, touching his perfect tiny hand. A voice inside her spoke with absolute clarity. "I refuse to let you grow up watching your mother settle for crumbs of affection. I will not let you believe that love is supposed to feel like loneliness. I will teach you what real strength is. I will show you what self-respect looks like. I will do it even if it means I have to burn my entire life to the ground and start completely over. Even if I have to be a single mother, even if it is hard, and even if I am terrified, I will do this for you and for myself." Speaking aloud, she whispered, "Hello, babies. I am your mom, and I love you both so, so much. I promise I'm going to give you the life you deserve, no matter what it takes." One of the babies kicked. It was Emma, her strong little fighter. Nathan stood a few feet away, just watching, his eyes suspiciously shiny. Grace looked over at him. "Thank you for being here. There's nowhere else I would rather be." 4 more days went by. Grace recovered from the birth in her hospital room, while the twins remained in the neonatal intensive care unit. Derek visited one time. He stayed for about 10 minutes, took some pictures for his social media, and then left. Nathan visited every single day. He brought her food, coffee, and books that she lacked the energy to read. He simply showed up for her. On the 4th day, Dr. Caroline Cross came into the room holding discharge papers. "You are healing very well. Your blood count is back to normal, and there is no sign of infection. You can go home today." "When can the twins go home?" Grace asked. "Likely in about 2 weeks. They are gaining weight and getting stronger each day." "Can I just stay here with them?" Caroline paused. "We have a family room, but it is a shared space, not private. Grace, you need to get real rest in a real bed." Grace fell silent. Home? The penthouse? The place where Derek was? The place where every single object was a reminder of the lie she had been living. She had not spoken to Derek since that first horrible night. He had called and sent text messages. He even had flowers delivered. She had ignored all of it. "Where will you go?" Caroline asked softly. Just then there was a knock on the door, and Nathan walked in. He was carrying lunch from that really good sandwich shop downtown. He took one look at Grace's face and stopped. "What is wrong?" "She is being discharged today," Caroline explained. "But she does not want to go back to the penthouse." "Then don't," Nathan said without a moment's hesitation. "What?" "Do not go back there. At least not right now." "But I do not have anywhere else to go." "Yes, you do." Nathan put the lunch down on a table. "I own a guest house. It is on my property out in Marin County. It has 3 bedrooms and is fully furnished. It has been sitting empty for the last 6 months. You can stay there." "Nathan, I could not possibly." "Why not?" he asked. "Because I barely know you. You do not owe me a thing. And besides, people will talk. Let them talk. You need a safe place to recover. Somewhere Derek cannot just show up whenever he feels like it. The guest house is completely separate from my main house, a full 200 yards away. You would have total privacy. This is just too much. I have an empty house, and you need a place to live. It is just logistics." Caroline quickly added, "Grace, you should take his offer. You need a calm, stress-free environment. Marin County would be the perfect place for you to recover. I just do not want to be a burden." "You are not a burden," Nathan said with firmness in his voice. "Please, let me help you." Grace looked at him, really studied his face. "Why are you doing this for me?" Nathan sat down and took a deep breath. "I told you about my mother and how she passed away alone. What I did not tell you was that my father was having affairs. Multiple affairs, my entire childhood. My mother knew about them. We all did. But he would always deny it and make her feel like she was crazy for even asking, just like Derek is doing to you." Grace felt the air catch in her throat. She spent her entire marriage making excuses for him, telling herself that she was just being paranoid. She would say that successful men work hard and that she should just be grateful. She died still making excuses for him. "I am so sorry. Do not be. It taught me exactly what kind of man not to become. And it taught me to recognize narcissistic abuse when I see it." What Derek is doing to you, what he has been doing for years, is textbook. The gaslighting, the blame shifting, the way he makes you question your own reality. You are not crazy, Grace. You are being abused. The word just hung there in the air. Abused. Grace had never once thought of it that way. Derek had never hit her or even screamed at her. He was just always busy, distracted, and unavailable. But she realized that emotional abuse was still abuse, and she had been living with it for years. "Okay," she whispered. "Yes, thank you. I will stay at the guest house, just for a little while, until I can figure out what to do next. Stay as long as you need." As Nathan was helping Grace pack her things, Nurse Rachel appeared at the door again. "Mrs. Holloway, you have a visitor." "Who is it?" "It is your husband." And he brought his lawyer. A knot of dread formed in Grace's stomach. They went down to the main lobby, where Derek was standing in a freshly pressed navy blue suit. Beside him stood a man in his 60s with silver hair, carrying an expensive briefcase. He had the cold eyes of a shark. He was clearly the lawyer. "Grace, Jim," Derek began, "we need to discuss custody." The lawyer, whose name tag on his briefcase read Richard Brennan, Esquire, stepped forward. "Mrs. Holloway, my name is Richard Brennan, and I am Mr. Holloway's legal counsel. We need to discuss the custody arrangements for the children." Grace tightened her grip on the arms of her wheelchair. "The babies are in the neonatal intensive care unit. We are aware of that. We are talking about arrangements for after they are released. Mr. Holloway is prepared to file for joint custody, a 50-50 split." "50-50?" Grace's voice was barely a whisper. "It is standard practice in Washington state for parents of equal standing." Nathan took a step forward. "Equal standing? He was not even here when his children were born." Brennan did not even flinch. "Mr. Cross, I do not believe you are a member of the family. This is a private matter. I am her friend, and I am not going anywhere. We can certainly discuss this once Mrs. Holloway's own attorney is present. Does she have counsel?" Grace shook her head no. "Well, I suggest you retain someone very quickly. Mr. Holloway is also concerned about your current living situation. Moving in with a man you have known for less than a week raises serious questions about your judgment and stability." At that moment, something inside of Grace finally snapped. 4 days ago, she would have shrunk under his gaze, apologized, and tried to explain herself, but not anymore. "You want to talk about judgment?" Her voice was like steel. "Let us talk about how Derek ignored 4 emergency calls from me while I was hemorrhaging. Let us talk about how he showed up 3 hours after our children were born, or how he spent the last 6 months cheating on me with his assistant while I was pregnant with his twins." Brennan's blank expression never changed. "Mrs. Holloway, marital indiscretions are considered a separate issue from parental fitness." "Are they really? Because I would argue that a man who cannot prioritize his wife during a medical emergency might also have trouble prioritizing the needs of his children. If you are going to start making accusations, these are not accusations. They are facts. They are all documented by the hospital's phone records, the nurse's testimony, and the paramedic reports. Not to mention the dozen voicemails I still have on my phone. Would you like to hear them? The ones of me begging my husband to come home while I was bleeding all over our bathroom floor?" Derek finally spoke up. "Grace, you are being completely unreasonable." "No! For the first time, I am being a mother, and I am done letting you make me feel crazy for expecting basic human decency." Nathan then pulled out his phone. "Mr. Brennan, I suggest your client backs down immediately." "Are you threatening us?" the lawyer scoffed. "No, I am making you a promise. If Derek pursues this custody battle, I will personally fund Grace's entire legal team. We will hire the best divorce attorneys in all of Seattle, the kind that charge $2,000 an hour and never, ever lose. Mr. Cross, your money does not scare me. It should. Because if this goes to court, every journalist in this city will learn that the CEO of a major pharmaceutical company, Derek Holloway, abandoned his pregnant wife in the middle of a medical crisis. They will learn that he ignored her emergency calls so he could drink champagne with his investors. They will learn he was cheating on his wife as she carried his twins. And they will learn his mistress is his 28-year-old employee. The color drained from Derek's face. How do you imagine your board of directors will take that news? What about your investors? That Singapore deal is not finalized yet, is it? Do you believe they want to be in business with a man whose private life is a train wreck in public? Brennan clutched his briefcase. This kind of public smearing can go both ways. Can it? I have hard proof. I have hospital records, phone logs, and sworn testimony from paramedics, nurses, and doctors. What do you have? Guesses about where Grace is staying? Nathan went on. So here's how this will unfold. Grace will retain a lawyer, a very good one. You will then negotiate a reasonable custody agreement where Grace has primary custody. Derek will have supervised visits until the twins are old enough to spend longer periods away from their mother. Supervised visitation is for parents who are unfit. Exactly. Derek lunged. I am not an unfit father. You were absent for their birth. You have seen them twice in 4 days. You are standing here with your lawyer instead of being upstairs with your newborn children. So, what part of that makes you a fit parent? Derek's gaze shifted between Grace and Nathan, his face flushing with anger. His hands were balled into fists. He was a businessman who always calculated the odds and weighed his options. He understood when he was outmaneuvered, this is not finished. Yes, it is, Grace stated softly. You were the one who ended it 6 months ago when you chose her. You ended it for good today when you arrived with a lawyer instead of flowers. It is finished. Derek, you need to accept that. You will come to regret this. The only thing I regret is that I did not leave you sooner. Derek and Brennan departed. Grace remained in the wheelchair, trembling. But this time, it was different. It was not from fear. It was the rush of adrenaline, the feeling of her own power. Did I truly just do that? You certainly did, Nathan affirmed. And you were absolutely incredible. Caroline emerged from around the corner. I heard everything. Grace Holloway, you are officially my new idol. Grace laughed, then began to cry, and then laughed through her tears. I have absolutely no idea what I am doing. None of us ever do, Caroline replied. But you are moving forward anyway. That is what truly counts. They drove toward Marin County in Nathan's Tesla. The ride was silent and smooth. Grace watched the Seattle skyline fade away in the rearview mirror. I have never confronted him like that before. How does it make you feel? Terrifying, and also wonderful. Incredibly wonderful. The property was stunning. It was a modern architectural marvel with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the San Francisco Bay. Lush trees surrounded the area, and the air had a crisp, clean scent. The guest house was a separate structure from the main house, complete with its own driveway, ensuring total privacy. The interior was a peaceful, open-concept space with white walls, hardwood floors, and comfortable furnishings. It had 3 bedrooms, 1 master, and 2 smaller ones. One room had been completely converted into a nursery, furnished with 2 cribs, a changing table, a rocking chair, and soft gray curtains. Nathan, when did you manage all of this? Caroline gave me a hand. She knows exactly what babies need. On the kitchen counter, there was a welcome basket filled with groceries, coffee, prenatal vitamins, and a soft blanket. A note written in a feminine script read, "Welcome home. You are going to be a wonderful mother. Please call anytime, day or night." Signed, Caroline. P.S. Nathan is on speed dial 2. I am on speed dial 1. Please use us. Grace held the note and read it a second time as tears welled in her eyes. Why are you both being so wonderful to me? Nathan put her bag down on the floor. Because you are worthy of kindness. You deserve to have people who show up for you, who keep their word, and who do not make you plead for basic human decency. 2 weeks after that, the twins were discharged from the hospital. Emma and Lucas each weighed 5 pounds. They were healthy, strong, and absolutely perfect. Grace brought them to the guest house, a temporary place that was quickly beginning to feel like a permanent home. She stood inside the nursery, holding a baby in each arm. This was the real reason she had been fighting. It was not for a marriage with a man who did not want to be a husband or a father. It was for this, for her children, for herself. It was a chance to create something genuine. Nathan's help was ever present, but never intrusive. He would bring by groceries. He held Emma so Grace could feed Lucas. He made late-night runs for diapers without ever being asked. He treated Grace as if she were a capable and strong woman, not someone who was broken or needed to be rescued. He saw her as someone who simply needed some support. At 3 in the morning one night, Grace was in the middle of feeding Lucas when Nathan knocked gently on the door. "Can you not sleep?" "Sleep is a concept for other people," Grace replied. She offered a tired but real smile. "Would you like some company?" "Always." Nathan settled into the second rocking chair, the one that had been intended for Derek, a seat he would now never fill. They sat together in a comfortable quiet. Lucas made a soft grunting noise, and Emma sighed from her crib. "Why are you going to all this trouble?" Grace finally asked. "I mentioned before, my mother. I feel like there is more to it than just that." Nathan remained silent for a long moment. "The evening Caroline called me, I was attending a gala, delivering a speech about the importance of being there for children in need. Then she explained that a woman was dying all by herself because her husband was too occupied. In that moment, I realized I was becoming just like my father, too occupied with things that do not matter, building a business empire instead of meaningful relationships. You are not anything like your father. Am I not? I work 80-hour weeks. I have not been in a relationship that lasted more than 3 months in the last 5 years. I solve problems by throwing money at them instead of my time. At least, that was true until I met you." "Until you met me?" "Helping you is not only about you. It is about me becoming the person I desperately needed when I was young, the person my mother needed. It is about discovering the man I want to be, not the billionaire or the CEO. Just myself." Grace reached out and took his hand. "Thank you for truly seeing me, for being here, for not making me feel like I was weak. You are the most resilient person I have ever met, Grace." 6 months flew by. The King County Courthouse was a gray, imposing structure against the November sky. Grace stood on the courthouse steps, her hands trembling slightly as she prepared to enter her final divorce hearing. It had been 6 months since that awful night, 6 months filled with healing, with growth, and with becoming an entirely new person. Jennifer Morrison, her divorce lawyer, gently touched her arm. "Are you ready?" Grace gave a firm nod. She was ready. Inside the courtroom, Derek was seated next to Vanessa. They had arrived as a couple, holding hands, yet they both appeared completely miserable. It turned out that the allure of being a mistress did not translate well to the reality of being a wife. The everyday routines, the ordinary moments, the actual work a real relationship requires. Vanessa looked exhausted and resentful, as if she had been cheated out of a better deal. Derek seemed older, with more gray in his hair and new lines etched around his eyes. Looking at them, Grace felt a surprising emptiness. There was no anger, no sense of triumph, not even a shred of pity. There was only an overwhelming feeling of relief that she was not in Vanessa's shoes. Jennifer began to present the proposed settlement. Full physical custody of the minor children, Emma Grace Holloway and Lucas James Holloway, is to be granted to Grace Holloway. Mr. Holloway will receive supervised visitation every other Saturday for 4 hours. This supervision requirement will be lifted once the children reach the age of 3, provided he maintains regular visits and shows consistent engagement. Child support will be $5,000 per month for each child, making a total of $10,000. Regarding marital assets, the penthouse has been sold and the proceeds will be divided 60-40. In Mrs. Holloway's favor, due to Mr. Holloway's marital infidelity and his abandonment of her during a medical emergency. Derek's lawyer attempted to argue. Your Honor, a 60-40 split is punitive. Judge Patricia Henderson, a woman in her 60s with piercing eyes, interrupted him. Mr. Brennan, your client was unfaithful during his wife's high-risk pregnancy and ignored multiple emergency calls, which led to his wife nearly dying alone. I consider the 60-40 split to be quite generous. I would advise you to accept it before I decide to make it 70-30. The judge then addressed Derek directly. Mr. Holloway, I strongly recommend you take advantage of your supervised visitation time to forge a real relationship with your children. They deserve a father who is present in their lives. Be that father. The gavel struck. The divorce is granted. Custody is awarded to Mrs. Holloway. As specified, this court is adjourned. It was finally over. Grace stepped out of the courthouse and into the brisk November air. Nathan was there, leaning against his car, waiting for her. He had attended the hearing, sitting quietly in the back of the courtroom for moral support. How are you feeling? I feel light, as if I have been carrying an enormous weight for years and have finally been able to set it down. Good. That is very good. They stood together for a moment on the courthouse steps, Grace in her simple navy dress and Nathan in his tailored suit. What comes next for you? Nathan asked. Grace smiled. I am enrolling in school again, an online program in child psychology. I want to help other women who have been through what I have. I want to help them identify narcissistic abuse before they nearly lose their lives on a bathroom floor. That is a wonderful goal, Grace, and I am going to spend some time dating myself. I need to figure out who I am without having someone else tell me who I ought to be. A smart plan. Grace paused, then looked Nathan straight in the eye. But after that is done. After I figure out who I am, I was wondering if we could get coffee? Real coffee, not the kind from a hospital vending machine. A broad smile spread across Nathan's face. I would really like that. It would not be a date. Not yet, not yet, Nathan echoed. But it could be someday. It could be someday. Grace started to walk away, but then she hesitated and turned back. Nathan, I have to say something. I need to say it right now before I lose my courage. Nathan's expression grew serious. Okay. 6 months ago, you were there for me. Every single day. For every 3 a.m. feeding. Through every panic attack. Every single moment. You did not have to be there. You had no obligation. But you were there. Grace? No, please let me finish. To Emma and Lucas, Derek is a complete stranger. He stopped coming around when they were just 3 months old. They have no memory of him at all. But they know you, Nathan. Lucas lights up at the sound of your voice. Emma finds her deepest sleep resting on your shoulder. When they are upset, it is you they call for. Nathan's gaze was intense. You are the one changing diapers at 3 a.m. You are the one who sings them lullabies. You read them stories before bed every single night. You are present. So I need you to know that if the idea feels right, if you are ready, I want you to be their father. In every sense. On the official documents. not just as a feeling, but as a fact. They could be Emma and Lucas Cross, or even Cross Holloway. The choice is yours. The air was still. Nathan was motionless, his eyes locked on Grace, slightly red-rimmed. Are you asking if I want to adopt the children? I am asking if you will be their dad. For real, in the eyes of the law, not just Uncle Nathan anymore, but Dad, their father. Nathan closed the distance between them, one step at a time. He was right in front of her now. Grace Holloway, the past 6 months have been the most wonderful period of my entire 40 years on this earth. Nathan, I just knowing that I would see you and see Emma and Lucas every single morning has been an incredible blessing. It is a gift I felt I was not worthy of. Still, I am thankful for it each and every day. I adore those children, both Emma and Lucas. I cherish the way Lucas wraps his little hand around my finger. I love when Emma drifts off to sleep on my shoulder. I even love their 3 in the morning cries. I love the sweet scent of their hair. I love every single part of it. Grace gasped, her breathing shallow. And I am in love with you. I have been in love with you since that first night at the hospital, when I saw you display more strength than I had ever witnessed in anyone. My love for you grows stronger with each passing day. I admire your resilience, your devotion to your children, the way you have pieced your life back together, your refusal to ever surrender. So my answer is yes. Unequivocally, yes. 1,000 times, yes. I will be their father. I will sign all the documents. I will change their names. I want the school meetings, the doctor visits for their shots, every single birthday, and every Christmas. I want all of it. Tears of joy were streaming down Grace's face. But Grace, there is something else I want. What is it? From his jacket, Nathan produced a small box covered in velvet. Grace covered her mouth with both hands. This is not how I pictured this moment. My plan was something romantic, with a beach and a sunset, maybe some candles. But Grace, I have been holding this in for 6 months. I simply cannot wait any longer. Nathan lowered himself to one knee, in that very spot, on the steps of the courthouse. Grace Holloway, being with you inspires me to be a better person, a better man, a better father, and a better partner. I cannot promise you perfection. I cannot promise that I will not make errors along the way. But I can promise that I will always be by your side. I will always pick up when you call. I will always prioritize you and the children above everything else. Always, Grace. Would you do me the honor of marrying me? Grace stared at Nathan. This was the man who rescued her, the one who never left, the one who cherished her children as if they were his. Yes, absolutely yes. Nathan got to his feet. He slid the ring onto her finger. Then he kissed her. Right there in public, on the courthouse steps. Passers-by paused to watch. They smiled warmly. A handful of them even clapped. Grace let out a joyful laugh as the tears flowed. I cannot believe this is real. You should believe it. This is our reality, every part of it. A year and a half had passed. It was a Saturday morning in Sausalito, inside Grace and Nathan's house. It was no longer the guest house. It was their shared home, their life together. Sunlight poured into the bright, warm kitchen, which buzzed with happy morning energy. Emma and Lucas, who were now 2 years old, were seated in high chairs wearing identical pajamas. Pancake pieces were scattered everywhere. Their little fingers were sticky. The scene was one of pure happiness. Nathan was at the stove, flipping more pancakes. He wore an apron that read, "World's Okayest Dad." Grace prepared coffee. Her belly, 7 months pregnant with their third child, gently bumped against the countertop. "Daddy, I want more juice," Emma demanded, lifting her cup. A wide smile spread across Nathan's face. "What is the magic word, Emmy Bug?" "Please," she lisped. "There is my girl." He filled her cup with juice and placed a kiss on top of her head. Lucas started hammering his spoon on the tray. Dada, Dada, hold me. As soon as we finish breakfast, little man, you need to eat your pancakes. Grace observed the scene, her heart swelling with so much love it felt ready to pop. This was what a family looked like. It was not flawless. It was disorganized. It was wild. It was gorgeous. Nathan noticed her looking at him. What is on your mind? Nothing at all. I am just feeling very happy. I am too. He came closer and rested a hand on her pregnant stomach. And how is the newest member of the Cross family doing today? Moving around a lot. So very active. I believe we have a future soccer player in here. Just like his big brother. Emma suddenly shouted, Mama, Daddy, look what I made. She proudly presented a crayon drawing of several stick figures. There was a mama, a daddy, Emmy, Luke, and one very small baby. That is absolutely beautiful, my love. That is our family, she declared. You are right, sweetie. That is our family. Nathan's tone became serious. Grace? Yes? I wanted to say thank you. What for? For allowing me to be their father. For accepting me as your husband. For giving me all of this. Grace gently squeezed his hand. Thank you for being there from that very first night, and for every single night that followed. I will always be there for you. Always. Lucas yelled from his high chair, Dada, I want a pancake. Now! Nathan chuckled. I guess that is my cue. Just then the doorbell chimed. Grace went to answer it and found a delivery driver. I have a delivery for Nathan Cross. That is us. The driver gave her a formal-looking envelope. Grace tore it open and began to read. Tears immediately welled up in her eyes. Nathan! Nathan, you need to see this. Nathan came into the room with Lucas perched on his hip and a smear of pancake batter on his t-shirt. What is it? Is everything okay? Grace held out the document, her hands trembling with joy. It is finalized. The adoption is complete. You are officially their legal father. They are Emma and Lucas Cross. It is really done. Nathan gently placed Lucas on the floor. He took the document from her. It was a certificate of adoption for Emma Grace Cross, and for Lucas James Cross. The legal father was listed as Nathan William Cross. The date was November 1st, 2027. Nathan's eyes filled with tears as he read it. I am their dad. You've always been their dad, Nathan. This just makes it official. Emma wobbled over to him. Why is Daddy crying? Nathan lifted her into his arms, then did the same with Lucas. He held both children close. These are good tears, Emmy Bug. They are happy tears. Happy tears? Emma echoed with excitement. Lucas gently patted Nathan's cheek. Dada, you are my Dada. That is right, little man. I am your Dada, for always. Grace rested her hand on Nathan's shoulder. The four of them stood together, a complete family. In a movie, the camera would slowly pan out, revealing the sunlit kitchen. You would see the pancakes cooking, the colorful drawings on the refrigerator, and the adoption certificate lying on the counter. A real, imperfect, and beautiful family. A framed professional photograph hung on the wall, showing Grace, Nathan, Emma, and Lucas all beaming. Underneath was a little plaque that read, Family is not defined by bloodlines. It is defined by the people who are there for you, who remain by your side, who love you when you are broken and cheer for you when you succeed. This family was built on love, founded on choice, and made to endure. Grace thought to herself one final time, just 18 months ago, I was on the verge of dying all by myself. Now I have more love in my life than I ever could have imagined. I will forever be thankful to Derek for giving me Emma and Lucas. But it was Nathan who gave them a father. He gave me a true partner, not a person who appears only when it suits him, but a person who is always present, no matter what. This is my version of happily ever after, not because it is flawless, but because it is genuine, and it belongs to me. It belongs to us. Emma pulled at the hem of Grace's shirt. Mama, I am hungry, Grace chuckled. Another batch of pancakes is on the way. Nathan began dishing up the food. Emma made sure everyone had another look at her drawing. Lucas insisted on getting more juice. It was ordinary, wonderful chaos. This was the life Grace had struggled so hard to achieve. It was not about the financial security she gained from a wealthy ex-husband, although that certainly made things easier. It was not about the settlement that granted her independence, though that was important too. It was not even about freeing herself from emotional abuse, though doing so had saved her. No, this was the reason she fought. She had fought for mornings filled with the sound of laughter, for children who felt completely and utterly loved, for a partner who was always present. She had fought for a family created from choice, by choice, dedication, and authentic love. This was not the kind of love that seems perfect in theory. This was the kind of love that proves itself in the chaotic, wonderful, and flawed moments of day-to-day existence. Grace had nearly lost her life, alone on a cold bathroom floor. But she did not die. She endured. And through her survival, she rediscovered something precious she had misplaced over time. She found herself again. Derek had stolen 4 years from her. She refused to let him claim a single moment more. This was a new chapter. It was her chapter, and her children's. It was her chapter with Nathan. And it was absolutely perfect. It was not perfect because it was simple, or because it lacked any hardship, or because it resembled some storybook fantasy. It was perfect because it was genuine. It was a life they had selected, a life they had earned. Each morning, Grace awoke and actively chose this existence. She chose these people. She chose her own happiness, and each morning, Nathan made the exact same choice. He chose to be present. He chose to remain. He chose to love. He showed his love not through empty words, but through meaningful actions. It was in the diaper changes at 3 in the morning, the late-night trips to the pharmacy for medicine, the way he held Emma close during her shots, the time he spent reading stories to Lucas at bedtime, the effort he put into making pancakes on a Saturday. His love was in his presence, his constant, unwavering presence. That was the definition of real love. It was not about dramatic displays. It was not about costly presents. It was not about promises that were made only to be shattered. Love was the simple, daily decision to be there, to remain, and to care. Grace had discovered a painful truth. You cannot make yourself smaller to fit into someone else's idea of love. You cannot apologize for your existence until someone decides you are worthy. You cannot force another person to choose you. What you can do is choose yourself, and when you finally do that, the right individuals appear in your life, the ones who were destined to be there all along, the ones who see you for who you truly are and decide to stay. Grace had found her tribe, and she would hold on to them forever. Bright sunlight poured through the windows of the kitchen. Lucas giggled at a joke Nathan made. Emma presented her drawing to Grace for what must have been the 10th time. Grace placed a hand on her round belly. It was baby number 3. They were having a girl. Her name would be Caroline, in honor of the doctor who had not only saved Grace's life, but had also brought Nathan into it. It felt as though everything had completed a circle. She had gone from near death to new life, from profound loneliness to a loving family, from having nothing to having everything, from a toxic relationship to a healthy one, from being lost to being found. This was the narrative of Grace's life. It was not the tale of a victim. It was the tale of a survivor. It was the tale of a warrior. She was a woman who faced death and chose life instead. A full and vibrant life. She did not want to merely exist or even just get by. She wanted to flourish. And she was flourishing, alongside her children, alongside her husband. In the middle of her new life, a life she had constructed from the ruins of her past, a life that was chaotic and flawed and breathtakingly beautiful, a life that belonged entirely to her. And nobody, not Derek, not any other person, would ever be able to steal it from her. In the end, Grace Holloway was her own rescuer. But in pulling herself from the fire, she had forged something incredible. A real family. The kind of people who were always there, who stuck around no matter what, and who loved her without any conditions. And for her, that changed everything. Sisters, if you are watching this, and you recognize yourself in Grace's story, the ignored calls, the excuses you make for him, the way you question your own sanity when deep down you know something is wrong, please hear this. You are not crazy. You are not too emotional. You are not asking for too much by wanting someone to simply show up. Real love is not about grand gestures or expensive gifts. Real love is presence. It is the person who answers the phone at 3 in the morning. The one who chooses you, not because it is convenient, but because losing you is unthinkable. Never apologize for needing basic human decency. And never, ever wait for someone else to rescue you. Because the truth is, you have always had the power to save yourself. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button. Drop a comment, sharing your thoughts or your own experience. Share this with a sister who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you never miss another story that reminds you of your worth. This content was carefully researched, crafted, and manually edited by our team to bring you meaningful stories and life lessons. Thank you for being part of our community.